socialists in Latin America always work for the long run. This is crazy, but I think for an American audience, it's very important to mention. 25 years ago, the U.S. ambassador to Bolivia created the political career of Evo Morales, or boosted the political career of Evo Morales. Last year, this former ambassador to Bolivia was indicted for being a Cuban agent for 40 years. It's crazy how a Cuban agent was able to infiltrate the US administration. Being an ambassador to a country, he also was a National Security Council official. So I understand it's the highest infiltration of Cuba in the US government in history. So that's the deep how these people work.
This is Atlas Network with Michael Carnuccio.
Hi, and welcome to Atlas Network with Michael Carnuccio, where we bring you the people, ideas, and movements advancing liberty around the world. I'm your host, Michael Carnuccio, and today's episode dives into the big changes underway in Bolivia, a country where, for years, the political left has held the reins of power. But recent elections tell a different story. Leftist parties suffered significant losses, and there's growing momentum around new voices, new leaders, and new ideas. What's fueling that change? Well, with us today is Jorge Velarde Rosso, the leader of LIBERA Bolivia, an Atlas Network partner organization. Jorge is working on the front lines of a cultural and political shift, especially among Bolivia's youth. But before we jump in, a quick reminder, Atlas Network depends on the support of donors just like you. With a gift of $25 or more, you'll receive a complimentary print subscription to Freedom's Champion magazine. It's one of the best ways to stay connected to this worldwide freedom movement. Visit atlasnetwork.org to learn more. All right, let's get right into it. Bolivia's recent elections showed a dramatic shift. Leftist parties lost significant ground. So Jorge, from your vantage point, what does this signal about the public mood, and where does your organization fit into the greater Bolivian story?
Great. Thank you, Michael, for having me today, talking about Bolivia. That's a small country in the sense that we only are almost 12 million people in the center of South America, a landlocked country that usually doesn't make the news, unless in our movement, in the sense that, as you were saying before, after 20 years of, I always said, hardcore socialist regime, Bolivia wasn't in the radar in general in America and in the freedom movement. That's why 10 years ago, when I had some ideas and this desire to do something in Bolivia, I had to begin from scratch because there wasn't even a previous think tank working on freedom ideas. That's why I was telling Steven the other day that this week we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary from the signature of the legal persona. Do you understand? So this year we're celebrating our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations, that's fantastic.
Yes, thank you. It's a happy coincidence that it was this week. It of course is a formality in the sense that we signed the document, but we are celebrating this year our 10-year anniversary of work in Bolivia, and it has a lot to do with your question. More than 10 years ago, I was very young. I had the first ideas about LIBERA. I had it when I was 25 years old. I was beginning my professional career as a college teacher, and I needed the urge to do something because I knew 15 years ago that a socialist regime is gonna end bad for the country. And 50 years ago, Evo Morales' popularity in the country was at its peak. Talking about freedom, in general in Bolivia, but especially in that time, was like talking, from something from another era, or I don't know. But time has proven us right. Socialism never ends well, and now Bolivia is facing a major economic crisis. And the news you were speaking, the good news, so to say, the opportunity we have is that people are beginning to understand that. We are beginning to see the consequences of socialism with inflation after 40 years with almost no inflation in the country, with shortages on many commodities, especially in gas or something, some key commodities for any economy. People began to realize the problems. So when this coincided with this general election 2 weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago, as you were saying, populations in the ballot said, we want a shift for the country.
So I have to ask you, because there's a lot of people that are watching Bolivia right now, and they're saying, all right, well, these election results, this is just temporary. This isn't a new wave or a new direction for the country. This is just a blip. We see it all the time. What do you say to those people from the outside looking in that may be a little suspect about the recent elections?
As any opportunity, you have or as anything in history too, it's always the end is open. This is still open. Of course, that's for sure. The two new political possibilities. There are two new. They are not even political parties in the original sense. They are more like alliances from different political leaders. They are both. They were both a surprise in the sense the more center right and the more center left were both a surprise. And that's the good thing in the sense the message of the population at the ballots was clear. We don't want more years of this hardcore socialist regime like Evo Morales' political party, the problems they had internally because of Evo Morales' own political ego and political ambitions. So they collapsed as this evil regime that controlled the country for over 20 years. But that doesn't mean, of course, that people from one day to another, they want free markets and republicanism and I don't know. The center-left candidate is like this more social democrat alternative. That's why he's the front runner now. And the center-right candidate is rooting for more modern and more sound economics, but he still has to win the hearts of the people in the second round of the elections. That is gonna happen for the first time in Bolivian history too. That's very interesting.
Interesting, for sure. I'm wondering. Okay, let me back up. The last time you and I were together and we got to break bread and talk for a bit was in Rio. Atlas Network had a forum earlier this year there that we were together, and part of the CEO Summit where a lot of our colleagues throughout the continent, we were talking. And you were very passionate about the youth and the role that the youth are playing in Bolivia and the future. So we're sitting having this conversation about some surprise election results, and I have to ask, what role are the youth playing? What part were they in this and kind of the trajectory you see moving forward?
Well, that part of the shift, it's huge due to this issue that you are addressing, Michael, because Bolivia it's still a very young, in that sense, very young population country. So you can say like something like that. Half of the Bolivian population is under 30 years old. So we have this demographic bonus. And that's part of the hope we have in Libera, working with young people too. I can, in this, I was telling you before, we've been working 10 years, and I can see that in the Bolivian youth, there's a shift in these interests. These things, cell phones, internet, social media, uh, are a huge mindset changer in the world youth in general. But in Bolivia, we have this particularity, or in Latin America, we have this characteristic that for us, in the last 20 years, socialism was like the norm. In South America, status quo is socialism. So, as you can imagine, young people want change. That's something that's a characteristic of the young people. So for us, change is we want freedom, we want trade with the world, we want connection, we want to be able to travel. Bolivia, for example, has a lot of issues with that. So Bolivian young people want to travel, want to buy something in Amazon and you can receive it in the country, use Bitcoin for your, I don't know, for your online games and so. So that's a good thing for us. Status quo in South America and in Bolivia is socialism. And that's why young people are the hope for the future. They want something new.
So let's bring this together a little bit. How is, you mentioned 10 years, you're celebrating 10 years. You all have hit a pretty significant inflection point, and there's some major change that's happening in Bolivia. So what role are you and your colleagues, what's the organization doing? How do you tie in with all of this?
Our mission states that we want to work with young people to generate a free, prosperous, and fair Bolivia, a fair country. And we also add this idea, but in English it's hard to translate. We want a country where solidarity is also part of our mission. Because part of the people that don't like free markets and freedom ideas tend to think that we classic liberals are selfish people, that we want freedom for ourselves. And that's why in Libera we address a lot this idea that no, we want a country where human solidarity can flourish, because it's very human. When I am prosperous, when I am well off, especially in Latin America, I would say, and in that sense in Bolivia too, I want to invite you. I want to invite you a coffee, a beer. I want to have a party. We are very, very communal people. It's not true that we are like, in this sense, this more Anglo-Saxon version of liberalism. And part of what we want to show is no, the Latin American liberalism is it's party, it's friendship, it's having a good time. And you saw that in Rio, so I'm not telling you that.
And look, in a little bit, we're definitely going to talk about what a party would look like and what we do there in Bolivia together. But before we get there, I want to keep unpacking this a little bit, because one of the exciting things and impactful things about your story for your peers throughout the worldwide freedom movement is you really jumped in and started the organization when you were like in your mid-20s, right? I mean, so what was it at that time, besides just what you saw? You mentioned before, right? You were teaching the college level, you were in academics, and you kind of saw what was happening, and we need to have more conversation. But something had to make you take that step, right? And say, all right, I'm gonna go forward with this. I'm gonna put an organization together, and we're gonna step into the breach. What was it that had you take that first step?
A hard question. I would say freedom. I think it was I Viktor Frankl, I think, that said there should be a statue of responsibility in the other end in the U.S. If you have in the East Coast the Statue of Liberty, you should have a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. I would say that what motivates me was this notion that if I know, because a lot of people ask me, where did I learn this about Austrian economics and classic liberalism? Because in Bolivia, no one was teaching that. And I was always like self-taught in that sense. And when I went to Argentina to study in Buenos Aires, there I get in touch with some other think tanks, and so that's where I learned this idea. So I had this this sense of responsibility. I have this ability to teach. So I have to teach leaders because they will help spread the message quicker, because they have this ability to reach more people. That's like this atomic principle. If I hit an atom, it would split in two and make a chain reaction. And that's what we're doing in Libera. It's like teaching these ideas in our programs. We always aim for the long run. Our programs are not short, like a weekend or a month. Our programs last all year long in weekly sessions. So we have time to explain them economics and history and philosophy, and also give them soft skill tools, and so they can be more impactful in whatever they are doing. So after these years, we are seeing this change. We need more time, of course, and we are trying to take advantage of this window of opportunity that you were talking. This idea we learned in Atlas Network, the Overton window in Bolivia is moving fast.
You're describing this window and this experience now with the youth, and I'm thinking back to a decade ago when you first started, and everybody's like, where do you get these ideas from, right? Are you seeing, I guess, from back then when you very first started, because you were engaging students right out of the gate, to now working with students, is there a shift in the audience that it's palpable that you can tell? Or have students always been kind of open to the new ideas, you're just now starting to see momentum?
It's totally palpable, because 10 years ago, when we were working at workshops, we were doing workshops at high school, at a high school level, talking about free trade, and it was, as I was saying, it's like a novelty. And they say us, no one is telling us this, no one is telling that through entrepreneurship that I am the owner of my own life and my own decisions, and that I can be an agent of change. And so in the last years in our programs, we see people that already know I don't know. For example, for me, the best example is Austrian economics, because as you know, it's a very, very specific, in all the world, it's a very specific niche of people that read these authors, Mises, Hayek, and so. And 10 years ago, no one knew about them, and in this year, many young people already come with these ideas from what they are hearing in social media, especially. And this has a lot to do with what is happening in Argentina too, with Milei, and so there's a shift in the region, for sure.
And so I think one of the other things that's fascinating about your story that is instructive for our peers throughout the worldwide freedom movement, many of whom say, you just don't understand what it's like right now in my country and how oppressive the government is, or how far we're kind of shouting into the wilderness. But man, you got started and have been working for the last decade in that wilderness and really climbing uphill and slowly building momentum, and you're seeing results and you're seeing a shift of the population towards your ideas. So what kept you going, and what advice would you have for your peers?
I would insist in this idea that the long run always don't. I understand the temptation, so to say, that to do things right now, something for right now, but what keeps us going is this idea that if we want to make a real change, we have to understand that real change doesn't happen overnight. And as I was saying you in a previous email, for example, if this regime could, the socialist regime of Evo Morales, could have so much legitimacy for so long, we're talking about more than 20 years, it's because they all also had a plan. They also aimed for the long run. I was telling you that this is crazy, but I think for an American audience, it's very important to mention. 25 years ago, the U.S. ambassador to Bolivia created the political career of Evo Morales, or boosted the political career of Evo Morales. For almost 20 years, this was like, this is nonsense. But last year, this former ambassador to Bolivia was indicted for being a Cuban agent for 40 years. So I want to make this, because for us it's very important, is these people, the socialists in Latin America, always work for the long run. So it's crazy how a Cuban agent was able to infiltrate the US administration, being an ambassador to a country. He also was a National Security Council official. So I understand it's the highest infiltration of Cuba in the US government in history. And when I say this persona created the political career of Evo Morales, is because when he was ambassador, 1 week before an election in 2002, he said the U.S. government would not approve a candidate coming from the coca plantations. So a very nationalist reaction came in the Bolivian people, saying, who is this ambassador telling us what to do? And back then, in 2002, Evo Morales was the 5th position, and in a week, he was in the 2nd position. So he entered as a political frontrunner out of nowhere, and it has everything to do with this comment of the U.S. ambassador that we know now that was a Cuban agent. So that's the deep how these people work. And if we don't have the patience that they have, they are always going to win. They always are going to win.
So let's keep breaking down a little bit on this point about the organization, what you do at Libera Bolivia, what workshops. You do so many student workshops. I think last I saw there was like 6,000 students that you all reached. It was incredible. What is the workshop all about? Where did the idea come from? What are you all doing through the workshops? What's the impact that comes out of that?
Well, in the workshops, we began 10 years ago. We began with the workshops, and we would use some videos where now we have our own video now that talk about entrepreneurship, and so some play with some activities to play with the kids, with this idea to begin to change mindset. This idea that You don't need the government to solve your problems. You don't need to wait the government or someone else to solve your problems. In our programs now, we're trying to go deeper in that sense, as I was telling you before. It's like we need to have leaders that understand the economic, the legal, the philosophical, the historical implications that the classic liberalism have, and why they are a better option for the country. So our dream in Libera, as I was saying, was like in the mid and the long term, many of the leaders that have been fostered in our programs, the workshops or the training programs we have, be in key positions in the future, in journalism, in the academia, in business, not only in politics, in policy making. It's like creating this movement of like-minded people that understand the historical, philosophical, economical, legal implications of classic liberalism to be an option for the people. And the good thing is that we see that, as we were talking earlier, that the Overton window in the country is changing, and we want to take advantage of this opportunity and keep it moving where we want it to go. We know this. You can't fix let me end with this. I love to our young our young leaders. You can't change a country in a generation. You can't change a country in 30 years. And they always respond that, because I'm talking with 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 25-year-olds, and when you say 30 years, they can't even imagine that much time, because they didn't live so long. I always tell, make this mental calculation. In 30 years, an 18-year-old, it's still gonna be young. Still, professionally. So we can really make this change. We just have to. That's the good thing about young people. We do have time.
So, with respect to young people, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, I live in Oklahoma, right? And the divide between rural Oklahoma and urban Oklahoma, so rural and urban in the cities, a young person is quite a bit different from one versus the other. However, social media, and you mentioned before, technology, the phone, that's bringing them closer together. They're having much more similarity than a generation ago, right? There would be much more difference. Do you find that your communication, your engagement stays the same, whether you're in the rural parts of Bolivia or whether you're in an urban center? Is it the same conversation, or do you all have to nuance that discussion across Bolivia?
Very interesting question, because because as you can imagine, rural Bolivia, especially in the highlands, it seems like I don't know, 100, 200 years ago, because it's very, very poor and very, very rudimentary. Part of that's poverty, as you can understand. And Bolivia is a very poor country. So rural Bolivia and urban Bolivia are, in that sense, I would argue it's way different as rural Oklahoma and urban Oklahoma. But again, they have also access to technology. They are not totally isolated. So we also did some rural or some workshops in the rural area. And now that you mentioned, one of the dynamics we had with them is like a market role play game that we have. And they have to write down on paper things that they value. Things, and that's the idea. write down something that you value, because we want to then explain them about the subjective theory of value, but using this dynamic. And of course, when we did this dynamic in an affluent urban area, they wanted a travel to the US, an iPhone, or the latest, I don't know, pair of shoes, I don't know. When we did this in the rural area, they wanted a tractor, they wanted a bull, they wanted a motorbike, some things that were useful for them. But besides that, the idea is the same. It's like young people, they want new things, and that's why I always go back to this. They want the newest thing. They want to be in touch with the world. For another example that now I'm thinking is like the most of trends here in Bolivia happen in mid or low income parts of the country. For example, Korean pop or manga, anime, and those things are more popular in mid and low income families or young people than in most affluent, for example. So that's another good example that even in a poor country like Bolivia, internet is making these opportunities for more connection, for modernity, free markets, and so.
And so I mentioned a little bit before, I referenced when we were together last, and we were with a group of peer CEOs, and one of the conversations that was spirited at that time, I want to ask you about the question here, because it's this notion that so much in Latin America you face this opposition that free markets are out of touch with the needs of the poor. It's a typical objection that you and your colleagues were discussing, that it's different and it's nuanced, but it's the same objection. So I'm thinking about right now the move that's happening in Bolivia, and as you're having these discussions with students who are going to be very passionate about the needs of their fellow countrymen, how do you respond to this critique?
That trying not to be an academic, in Bolivia, I would argue that most people understand, without understanding the theoretical part, how economy works. Because a lot of one characteristic of the Bolivian economy is that most of people work in the informal sector. In that sense, I'm also saying like this because the labor regulation in Bolivia is one of the worst in the world, and so that's why 80% of the people is not fully registered as theoretically it should be. And for most economists and for most politicians, that's a problem. For us, it's like the evidence that people understand economy better than theorists does. So when you are from a poor, not only, I would say not just a poor country, when you're coming out of poverty, you can't take time to fill all the forms so the state will be okay with your work. You have to gain your bread every day. And the great thing about Bolivia is that that's why we're also very hopeful. It's like we see, this is not just an idea, we see this every day. We really see that thousands, millions of people have this creative capacity to overcome very, very difficult situations in Bolivia and still flourish. Because that's a great thing about the Bolivian economy too. We're not talking about the informal sector in the sense that just for survival. They really flourish. And that's part of one of the projects we have. It's telling these stories, how with their creative capacity, they overcome poverty. So the only thing we need to do in the country is change this legal and the institution ground, and they will explode. That's the great thing about Austrian economics. You don't need a plan. They know what to do.
So you've referenced it a little bit. I want to ask you to talk a little bit more, because this is one of the neatest projects I've heard that a think tank is doing right now. You have a documentary, like a mini series you're doing about street entrepreneurs in Bolivia. So where did the idea for this come from? And tell us a little bit about what to expect.
Ooh, as you were saying, the idea for us is like we see it every day in the streets. And we want to tell these stories because we think, and this is for us, part of the aim we have with this project is to show that to our friends in the region and in the world that if free markets work in the Andean region, we are a landlocked country. We don't have access, natural and political access to the sea. But besides that, we are at the mountains. Now, at this moment, I am talking to you on an average of 10 or 13 feet above sea level. 1,000 feet above sea level, sorry. 10,000 feet above sea level. Even if we had political and sovereign access to the sea, we still have this handicap for trade, because you can imagine every good and has to climb the mountain. And these people, because they are intelligent, because they are creative, because they are human in that sense, they have this human creativity, they find ways to make trade possible in these very hard circumstances. So what we want to tell in this in this documentary mini series is, look, we are not imagining these things. These things are happening. And again, that's the hope we have for the country. We don't need a master plan to solve it. We only have to give them the freedom to trade, to invest, to prosper, and it's in that sense is very, very
a heavy lift.
No, it's like hope makes your hope go bigger.
It's giving you hope. It's inspiring you, right? Is that what you're saying? It's lifting the burden off. Yeah.
It's inspiring.
Yeah, you're hearing the stories of others and inspired by what they're able to accomplish, and it helps unlock some creativity for you into what you might be capable of as well. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah. In the first chapter that we have it's already done, and we're launching this year too. We're doing the workshops. We have scheduled workshops for next month, and so and we're also presenting it for the Lights Camera Liberty competition. So you all at that period are gonna see the English subtitled version. It's amazing the story we're telling. It's a young Bolivian boy that's an orphan because her mother his mother died when he was only 11 years old, and he was alone with his father and a brother. And it's amazing to see how in such difficult circumstance he learned through life how like I was saying, it's like how economy works, because he began to work for a couple of coins, and he said, he began to understand, if I work harder, they see me like hardworking and they hire me again. It's very funny. This is not on the video because of, as you can imagine, he told us too many anecdotes, but this is very funny. Since he was young, he was playing at the soccer matches with the drivers in the union where he was helping. And he understood that they wanted him to play because he was young and he has ability. And he said, I understood that if I bought better shoes, they will hire me more. So a 18-year-old boy understood that a pair of shoes was for him an investment. It's great to hear those kind of stories.
Absolutely. I cannot wait. I can't wait to see each episode and see the future and where this goes. And I want to talk about one more project real quick. You had a economic freedom audit that you all did, released in, I believe, 2023. Pretty extensive project. I remember we talked quite a bit about it before. Right, there you go. Right. So what were some of these key findings that you had in the audit?
Well, thank you for, yeah, as you see, I had it prepared here, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. Yeah. In, in that case, we decided to take advantage that the Fraser Institute was measuring the economic freedom in the world for a very long time. It's the oldest in and since they began measuring it in the 70s, we decided to make like this long-term analysis. How was the historical records of Bolivia? And a great thing we discovered there is, and I can send you the image later if you want because it's very graphic in that sense, that in the mid-80s, Bolivia had the worst inflation in the world. We have an hyperinflation, and it was the worst in the world by far, only surpassed in the recent years by Venezuela, I think, and so. And in the mid-80s, a new Bolivian government implemented a very radical, so to say, program to solve inflation and to correct the Bolivian economy. And I would send you that, but you also can see how clear the graphic is. It's like at the bottom, yeah. In a couple of years, Bolivia has one of the solidest monetary economies in the region, and probably in the sense, if you see it again, no, probably in a first world level, because we are seeing here, it's like at the top of the of Fraser Institute's scale, and that's part of, in our interpretation, why Bolivian economy, why these people that we want to tell in this documentary series can flourish, because as you know, one key element for prosperity is sound money. If I know that my money isn't going to lose value in the long run, I can begin to save and invest and so. And that's part of the crisis we're heading right now in Bolivia, because we are having inflation back in the country.
And we should mention, folks, if you would like to see this economic freedom audit of Bolivia, please go to atlasnetwork.org, where you can find out about Jorge and his colleagues, all the wonderful work that they are doing. And while you're there, stop off at the donate page and join me in supporting the worldwide freedom movement. So, Jorge, I want to talk there about your relationship and experience as a partner with Atlas Network. What has that partnership been like? Give me your experience.
Well, for us, Atlas Network was I would like to say that it's like one of our best friends for our growth. And something I always like to address is like working with Atlas Network staff. It's always making friends, because it's really not like this heartless organization and of bureaucrats that they have to, this is my job, I really don't care. each people that we met at Atlas Network staff, they really do believe in the mission of Atlas Network, and they are really it's very quick to call them friends, because you meet them at the trainings and in the Liberty forums. So we really do talk about our Atlas Network relationship as a friendship. And it was really instrumental for the growth of Libera. The first grant we asked for Atlas almost 10 years ago was a small grant, so we can buy the material for the workshops. But as you can imagine, if we had to use audiovisual material for the kids, we needed a projector, because a rural school or a public school in Bolivia doesn't have that kind of equipment. And that the first grant we received from Atlas Network was just simply to buy a portable projector, so we can and good audio, so we could project the video that was instrumental for the workshops. So from this small grant, we began working and learning, because the trainings at Atlas Network were also very, very important, because you need you need to learn how to do something. And again, in Bolivia, we didn't have any reference. We needed that reference from other places, not only the US, but also the region, because that's also part of the great thing about it. At the beginning, I was talking about the Atlas Network staff, but that's why the name is Atlas Network. In the sense, it's not just the Atlas Network staff in the US, it's also the other partners in the region. So that's another good thing about Atlas Network, because we really do have now friends in all the region, because we met again in the trainings or in the Latin American Liberty Forum, and as you know from Rio, the best is the Latin American Liberty Forum, because we know how to partner.
Well, and we should mention, one of the annual events where friends from all over the world come together is in New York City for the Liberty Forum and Freedom Dinner. It's an annual event that Atlas Network does every November. Go to atlasnetwork.org if you would like to join us there with friends from all throughout the worldwide freedom movement. Jorge, you talked about many of the programs and the training sessions, but your first, if I remember, was probably Atlas Network Academy. That's typically like when I was first involved with an organization. A lot of us as leaders will go through that. What was that like for you? Take me back to your first experience, because I'm sure some of your peers in the worldwide freedom movement that are about to go through a similar experience, what can they expect?
As you can imagine, my first training programs were way back.
You're too young to say way back, buddy.
No, but well, I was too young when I began this too, though. So
yeah, true.
Another good thing about Atlas Network is that you can really see how they improve year by year. It's like, that's why I was telling you that the trainings, I can see that you're working on improving yourselves, and that's also very motivating for us, in the sense that we know that, and that's also an important part of our training programs too. Is like, the important thing is to understand that you are in a process of learning. It's not like you have to have this patience too, in the sense that we are learning together. We are getting better together, and your feedback is also very important, and your experience is also very important. So we learned from the Atlas Network Academy, from things so basic as like the overtone window, for example, or what's an output and outcome, and so on, to how to raise funds, and how to use AI tools, and how to engage new audiences, and again, how to to dream big, no? To challenge yourself to dream bigger. It's like, it's so funny that when you present a grant and you get rejected and you ask for feedback, they say, well, that present it for next time and put a more ambitious goal. It's like, okay. And that's what good friends do too.
So let's bring it on home here. We've got time left for a couple of questions. And you and I talked early on in this conversation. You mentioned a party. And so let's let everybody know what the Bolivian experience is all about. So if I come tomorrow, right, imagine that we're having this conversation, but we're doing it in your shop, in your office, and we're getting ready to go out and we're going to have dinner. What is that experience like? What are we eating? What is the Bolivian experience, the food that we're going to have?
Wow, that's yeah, it's a great question. As many Latin, Hispanic foods, it's very spicy, hot and spicy. We also like to drink a lot.
And what are you drinking when you drink?
Well, of course, depends on the food, but I would say beer mainly. Yeah, Bolivian. Now, it's in that sense, it's kind of funny how Bolivian people had even made beer part of some social rituals that they. Yeah, for example, to celebrate, you don't just drink beer. You have to give like a little bit to the Pachamama, they say. I don't believe in that, of course, but it's part of. That's why I meant it's like the first drink. You don't drink it yourself. You have to spill it in the floor, in the soil, because that's for the Pachamama. So yeah, some Bolivian folk stories.
Okay, so besides coming and visiting you and your colleagues at Libera Bolivia and supporting you and helping you in the work that you're doing, if someone were to show up and be in your neck of the woods tomorrow, what do they need to do for the Bolivian experience? If you're there for one day, what do you have to do?
Wow. Wow, just one day.
I know. I want a month, but one day.
Yeah. No. I was because one of the for sure one of the things one must see is the Uyuni salt flats. That's this amazing landscape that the biggest salt flat in the world, and at this altitude of the Bolivian plateau, it's like a endless wide, or like a mirror kind of experience. The sad thing, for example, is that because of the socialist, so much of a socialist regime, it's still like a tourist destination for like backpackers, because it's like, yeah, we don't have much luxury hotels to go there, and so, but give us time. Actually, this is a funny anecdote too. I was in Rio, and I was talking with some of our friends at Atlas Network staff, and I was telling us, I was saying, it would be a dream for us to host eventually a Latin American Liberty Forum in Bolivia, but we know that now is not the moment because we don't have the infrastructure and so. And she said, that's a good North Star for you. And this idea of North Star is very from the Atlas Network Academy. This idea I was telling at the beginning, it's like, put yourself an ambitious goal. So we do have this ambitious goal in maybe in 5 years, helping change this in the country so we can host a Latin American Liberty Forum in, I don't know, in 5 years' time.
And I love this conversation, Jorge. I love this conversation about 5 years, because the last question that I want to ask after this conversation we're having about where Bolivia has come from and what's happening in recent elections Tell us about the next 5 years. What kind of Bolivia do you see in 5 years? What kind of Bolivia do you see in 10 more years after the organization's been operating now 20 years? What's the future look like?
I am very optimistic. I think I always say this to the kids we work with. It's like, the future looks bright. The present looks dark. But we have to endure, we have to be intelligent in the short term, because the future looks bright, because we have this demographic bonus. We have a very energetic, creative, entrepreneurial young people in the country. I think I love about Bolivia, for example, is the poor or low-income young people in Bolivia. They always say they work and study. It's not like in Argentina or in Brazil or in other countries that they live because of government subsidies and they don't do anything. In Bolivia, we have these working and studying young people. So the future looks really good if we have the leadership to take these opportunities. And that's what we're doing in Libera. We're training ourselves, we're training other people to be those, as I was saying, this chain effect. It's like, I change and I help others change. I understand why freedom works and I help other people understand why freedom works. And we are creating this chain reaction. That's why we're still here. It wasn't easy, of course, as we were saying, working 10 years under a socialist regime. It wasn't easy, but we see this opportunity with a lot of hope. We know it's not gonna be easy too, but that's why we have good friends in Atlas Network too, and hope that in 10 years we're still friends.
Well, Jorge, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing part of your inspiring story and getting us all excited about Bolivia. Congratulations to you and your colleagues at Libera Bolivia for 10 years, and best wishes for 10 more and many more to come after that. And folks, I want to thank you for joining us today and encourage you to go to atlasnetwork.org and learn more about Jorge's work and also your opportunity to join the worldwide freedom movement by contributing there at atlasnetwork.org today. Until next time, thank you for joining us on Atlas Network with Michael Carnuccio.